And we are live on YouTube, and I'm going to let everybody in. Good evening, everybody. If you're just joining us, this is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a minute or two. If you're just joining us, this is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a minute. We just opened the doors. So far, I see 17 of you joining us. We expect a few more.
Uh-oh, the board's here. There we go.
If you're just joining us, this is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Don't adjust that dial. We're not talking. We're just waiting for people to come in. Welcome, everybody. Renters Alliance, Renter Town Hall. We always wait a couple of minutes because it takes a while to people to get into the program.
Can you open the chat, Matt?
Good idea.
Oh, what?
We'll give it one more minute and then we'll get going. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder, executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. Every couple of weeks, we have one of these renter town halls on subjects important to the renter community. And I think one of the top issues that has come across our desks lately is the rising cost of utility billing. I'm going to turn this over to our senior analyst for research and policy, David Mullins, who's going to lead this discussion this evening. He's been looking into it quite a bit and doing some research and has invited some important guests, and I'll turn it to him now. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, thank you, Matt. And good evening again to everyone. And like Matt mentioned, we're glad to be joined by a couple of folks on the panel who can help us better understand some of these utility issues. Before I introduce the panel, just a couple housekeeping things here at the top, which is that as you can see, hopefully the chat is going there and open. If you have questions as we go, please put them in the chat. We'll pause at a couple points and try to answer those somewhat as we go. So please do that, and of course, keep things respectful and in the chat as well. Then, yeah, I don't know if Matt already said, but this was live streaming on YouTube as well. So if there's anything that you want to revisit later, we'll be glad to provide a link. This will all be on YouTube. But let me now go ahead and introduce the panel who's going to be speaking us with this evening. And first of all, I'll just run through our other staff members who's here. In addition to our director, Matt, and myself, we have our outreach director, Jackie Mashinya. Then we have our outreach coordinators, Pat Beckham, Emily Towie, and Tim Huang. And we're joined also by our board treasurer, Josh Fisher, this evening. And then our special guests are, because we're talking again about utilities, utility prices, utility billing, and a lot of the associated questions, we are fortunate to have someone from the Maryland Public Service Commission with us. Stephanie Bolton, who is the director of the Consumer Affairs Division, I believe, right, is with us. And she's going to have a presentation here in a minute, and then is kind enough to take some questions and after that. And then finally, later on, we're also hopefully going to hear from Matt Kaufman. And then Matt is from the county and the Office of Consumer Protection, where a lot of utility-related complaints will flow. He's an investigator there. And so we appreciate him being here as well. And we'll check in with him a little later on. But for now, Stephanie, if you're ready to go, you want to go ahead and when you're ready, share your presentation, and I will kick it over to you.
Will do. Thank you so much, Matt and David, and all with the Montgomery County Renters Alliance for hosting me. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Okay, and we should be seeing a beautiful backdrop of downtown Baltimore illuminated over the water. Is that what we're seeing? Thumbs up? Excellent, thank you. So I am Stephanie Bolton, Director of the Consumer Affairs Division for the State of Maryland Public Service Commission. And what the Public Service Commission does is regulate the companies who bring you power. So that typically means your gas, your electric companies, but other utilities too, landline phone, taxi cab service, privately owned water and sewer companies. A quick note on things that we do not regulate: cell phone service, internet, municipal water, including WSSC, and a hot topic in energy lately, we do not regulate data centers, although we are aware of them and involved with many other entities in some issues around where they can be located and how to build out the transmission systems that will ultimately provide them with power on our electric grid. So my team, the Consumer Affairs Division, is responsible for answering questions from the public and resolving utility-related complaints. And as you can see, in 2025, CAD saw a 79% increase in complaints over the prior year, as many people understandably struggle to understand why their utility bills are so high. We see a lot more complaints coming in now against utility providers. And these complaints are primarily driven by affordability related issues. People trying to understand what's going on here. Is there something wrong with my meter? Well, what am I seeing? And why is it not what I was expecting? Even if affordability isn't a complainant's primary concern, it comes up in complaint narratives as people tell us what they're seeing and describe these unexpected changes and drastically higher bills. So we have a database that hosts all of our complaints, and what we see most is billing related complaints, followed by termination of service issues, electric utility, other miscellaneous issues, payment disputes, and meter concerns. So to give you an idea of what kind of complaints we see filed against gas and electric utilities, here's a breakdown of complaints by utility. I highlighted in red the places where we're seeing like a 20% increase over your typical expected monthly complaint totals for each utility, because each utility has a different quantity of households that they serve. Some of the bigger utilities within Maryland, like BG&E, are going to have drastically higher complaint numbers, but the highlighting gives you a feel for what is abnormal. And across the board, we're seeing that statewide utility affordability is an issue, just like it's a national issue across the board. It's turning into the new price of eggs. The extent to which we're focused on utility issues is challenging, there's so much that goes into utility rates and what exactly is coming in on your bill on the day-to-day. And it's difficult because with so many moving pieces, there's no one quick, easy fix that can bring those bills down. So just a brief affordability related overview, because this could be somebody's hours long panel presentation. When you look at your utility bill, you're looking at first your supply costs. So your supply cost is just the cost of generating the commodity, the electrons that come into your house, the gas that flows through the pipes into your house, and what that is costing. And that is one of the things that is not set by the Public Service Commission. That is a commodity that is acquired at auction by an entity called PJM, and they are our local regional transmission organization. They manage long distance transmission lines. They're not government. They're not corporate. They're an independent nonprofit that hosts these auctions that brings that commodity forward to you. So ultimately, the supply costs are passed on directly to the consumer. So if nationally and regionally resources are constrained, generation is limited, supply costs go up. So in addition, there are distribution costs that lead to your ultimate bottom line bill. What does that mean? That is the wires and pipes that bring you the commodity that ultimately comes into your house. It means the substations, it means the transformers, just the cost of moving the energy to the end user. So these rates, whether we're looking at distribution or supply, whether we're looking at gas or electric, they have gone up dramatically over the last 10 years, 15 years. And at the end of the day, there's issues related to load growth. The amount of energy that we're generating right now doesn't quite keep up with the demand. And that can implicate data centers, kind of the elephant in the room anytime you're talking about energy affordability in this region. Data centers eat up a lot of energy. They eat up as much energy as a small city. And here in Northern Virginia, which is on Maryland's grid, a part of our grid network, we have Northern Virginia, which is the data center capital of the world, not of our region, not of our country, of the world. It's a major data center hub, and it takes a lot of energy, and that is what it is. There are things that we can do now looking at data centers going forward, but it's a lot harder for your legislators to do much about already existing data centers. In addition, there's resource adequacy issues around power plant closures. Maryland is a net importer of energy. We import around 40% of our energy, and that puts us at the mercy of the market. And ultimately, in this area, we don't have enough energy being generated to meet the needs of our growing demand for energy. And we aren't in a situation where the market is yet incentivized to build more generation. The other issue with building generation is it's not the easiest thing. It's going to take years, if not decades, depending on what kind of fuel source ultimately somebody decides to invest in and put in. So, in addition, within the PJM, the regional grid operator, they have a line of companies looking to get in to make their generating facilities, right? Well, you can't just put a generating facility on the map. You have to have the transmission infrastructure that connects that to the rest of the grid. And that can also get very expensive. And that can also be very time consuming. As far as the public process that goes with that, it's both necessary, but ultimately incredibly important. But it's not fast. It was not built to be fast. There's also a variety of legislated charges that will appear on your bill. You might see the Empower Maryland charge on your bill. Empower Maryland is a program that's existed in Maryland since 2008 that helps people reduce their energy usage and lower their bill that way through things like appliance upgrades and home energy checkups, weatherization. And ultimately, the Empower Maryland surcharges have been increasing due to an issue related to accounting. So it's gone from, a few bucks on somebody's bill to, it's somewhere in the double digits. And it's coming at a time when everything else is getting more expensive, even though it's a worthwhile program. It's a difficult thing to look at there on your bottom line when all of those charges start adding up. In addition, there is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that Maryland is a part of, along with many other states in our area. It's like a cap and trade, but for energy. It incentivizes clean energy use, but clean energy can be more expensive. So that's another reason why some of our bills are a little higher than they otherwise could be. In addition, we have, not everything is looking entirely bleak. There are some changes coming to Maryland's energy scene this legislative session. We had a bill pass, HB 1532, the Maryland Utility Relief Bill, that's going to bring some changes to what you're seeing in your utility bill. It's not going to be a sea change. It's going to be more of a gradual change. But the bill impact of that, once ultimately impacted, maybe around $10 a month. But got to start somewhere. And ultimately, it's a really challenging, far-ranging problem that has a number of different causes, and it's going to take a lot of time to work out a number of solutions for it. So another point that I want to kind of pivot to when it comes to the needs of renters in Maryland is the direct metering versus master metering issue. This is something that we see in the Consumer Affairs Division not infrequently. Most of the customers in Maryland are direct metering customers, meaning that each home is going to have its own meter. And residents can set up their account with their utilities. There's a direct relationship there between the customer and the utility. So the utility is going to read the meter and bill the resident directly. And when a customer, sorry, dogs, when a customer has an issue with their utility bill, their recourse is getting in touch with us at the Public Service Commission. And it's not an obstacle to energy assistance. Compare that with master metering, which some of the, not some, but not all of the rental community may be experienced with, but that's where you have that single meter in your multifamily home, and it measures the usage for the entire property. And when I talk about the entire property, it may be a row house subdivided into 3 units. It may be a whole apartment building with 100 units. And ultimately there, the property owner or manager gets the bill for the entire property. They divide up that cost. And from there, we get a lot of non-jurisdictional complaints where this leads. And those complainants are then referred to the Office of the Attorney General for assistance. There's a handful of things that we can be involved in, but by regulation, we do end up sending most people over to the Office of the Attorney General. Energy assistance, again, it depends on your circumstances. So when it comes to master metering, there's some cost division options, and ultimately you could have a flat fee, maybe it's included in your rent. You could have the charges divided equally between all units, and the size could be the deciding point if it's based on, say, square footage and not by usage, not by number of occupied units. So ultimately, it makes things a little more difficult because you can't complain to the entity that spends the most time resolving complaints related to this particular subject matter. But there are a couple things that we do have on the statute that we can regulate. For instance, a landlord and a property manager that can't tack on unauthorized extra charges. For instance, they're allowed to charge a $1 administration fee, but everything else beyond that has to be just the charges from the utility passed on to the tenants. So
On that, just a quick question, the ratio billing where they're dividing it up there, and I'm following what you're saying here, where your complaint isn't directly with the utility at that point, and so that's why it's not coming to y'all. It looks Office of Attorney General I saw got mentioned there for that. Are you but I'm guessing you probably receive questions and things about that. In your experience, have you reviewed some of the examples of language in leases and things in the way that that's communicated, and if so, do you think that's been done adequately for the most part that you've seen, or has there been in any experience just a lack of communication there?
I think that when you are a renter, the lease is full of just boundless surprises that you discover later on. As you're coming across different issues. I know that leases are, just pages and pages of fine print, and the bits about utilities, how they're covered, who's paying for them, and whether that's something that feels fair. It doesn't usually shake out until you, the tenant, are suddenly in a position where you're called to question that. When we see these complaints, we have tenants that question whether what they're being charged for is really just their unit, if that's what it says it should be in their lease, or some people have thought that what they're paying must also reflect some of the common areas, or maybe a basement area if you have a smaller unit. And, there could be a lot more in the way of clarity between the landlord and the leaseholder.
Oh, gotcha. But in that scenario you just mentioned there, then that would be something that the Attorney General's office could potentially review to see if that, if first of all, if the dividing up is proper, and then the messaging around it and all that too, I guess.
Absolutely. As far as the dividing up goes, that is something that has to be approved by the commission. So if a landlord hasn't gotten authorization from the commission to divide their property up in a way that's consistent with our statutes and regulations, that's a problem. That's one of the few areas of landlord-tenant law that is pretty well regulated.
Thank you.
Well, at least within, the Maryland Public Service Commission. Obviously, landlord-tenant law is its own thing, but in the utility landscape, that's usually what we see more of.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next up is submetering, and within submetering, some buildings are going to have that available, and it is required for buildings built after 1978, passed in law that year. And that is where the property owner or the manager is going to read the meter and then bill the resident, usually through a third-party service like Conservice. And it can also be difficult if you're paying through, say, your rent, your utility bills, to get something like energy assistance. So there isn't always a ton that we can do if the tenant is not an account holder with a direct billed relationship from the utility. When that comes up, we refer people to the Maryland Office of the Attorney General or to a local consumer protection office. I know Montgomery County does have one. I know there's a representative on the line you'll hear from later. And some of the other bigger counties have that too, including Howard County. Similarly, if there's a landlord-tenant commission in your community, that's another good resource for these kinds of issues. Within the Maryland Public Service Commission, if you have an account in your name from Pepco or Washington Gas, whether you're a homeowner or a renter, you can absolutely file a complaint with us and we can proceed from there. In addition, if you have a question and you're not sure if it's something that rises to the level of complaint, I have put my email address on each of these slides. I'm happy to answer any questions related to somebody's individual specific situation and guide them either with resources elsewhere or more on how to file a complaint with us. As far as our complaints go, a couple general guidelines. We have a lot of people who will file things that are a little more like comments with us. When we think about a complaint, think about something that may violate the law. If there's something going on and you're wondering if this is a legal violation, if you're feeling like something just isn't right, that could be a complaint. But we've been getting more and more lately complaints that are more about the state of affordability of utility prices. And I can understand why people want to share that with the commission. Not everything is that's affordability is shaped by the commission. We can't control supply prices, we can't control the taxes and fees, but ultimately, a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to show you what you can do with some of those comments when it comes to Pepco and Washington Gas, because there is a place for that now. When you file a complaint, there's a narrative section of the complaint. Make sure you get as specific as you can about what it is that you're experiencing. Once you submit your complaint online, we also have a paper form. I'm happy to send that out to anybody, but most of our complaints come through our online portal. And at that point, we communicate with you through email unless you elect otherwise. Make sure to check your spam folder. A lot of times our communications get lost in there. And if you don't see one in your inbox right after filing, check that spam right away and put us on your safe senders list. We should be communicating with you from the cad.complaints@maryland.gov email address. So definitely make sure to do that. And if you haven't heard from us, give us a call or email to follow up with us. And there is an appeals process within the dispute resolution process. If you don't agree with the decision that we make, and we make that decision after reviewing what you had to say, getting in touch with your utility to hear what they have to say, apply the law to the facts, and come up with an answer. And ultimately, we don't get it right all the time. You can appeal it to the next level, and our decision letters all have instructions on how to do that. We have not just one, but two different levels of appeal within the commission. So, to what you can do to let the commission know how you feel about these rate increases, you have an opportunity now to communicate and participate directly in some of these hearings. Pepco has filed to increase their rates. I have noted their case number is 9820. There's a variety of ways you can participate, whether you want to file a motion and be a legal part of that case, like a party to the case. And rate cases are like legal proceedings. They're full evidentiary hearings. And if you want to participate, that is absolutely an option. In addition, you don't have to be a party to the case to participate. You can make a public comment to let the commission know how you feel about existing rates and how rate increases would affect you. You can make that comment in writing, or you can ask to speak at our upcoming public comment hearing. We do have one still on the books in the Pepco rate case. So next slide is going to be details of where you can find that. But if you just want to follow along at home, we do have this live streamed and available to watch later on our YouTube channel. So Pepco filed this rate case in October of 2025, and we have wrapped up evidentiary hearings on this one, but we are still taking public comments, including the public comment hearing that we're going to have on Wednesday, May 27th. And we're expecting a decision on what, if any, rate increase was approved in summer of 2026. It should probably be later in summer, like late August. The company has asked for 119 million in increases. It was originally a little bit higher. It was closer to 130 or 140. And some of the earlier proceedings, before it even hit the evidentiary segment, they agreed to knock down. Well, they didn't agree to, but they found themselves in a position where it made sense, if they were going to proceed with the rate case, to ask for a little bit less. Still, that's a pretty significant bill impact, as you can see. And when we talk about the rate cases and the bill impact that comes from them, keep in mind, this is all related to the distribution part of your bill. This is not related to supply rates or taxes and fees and any changes that might come from those. So to file a public comment on the Pepco rate case, you can go online and make sure you reference this case number. And I can certainly give you guys a PowerPoint so you have this information handy. If you would prefer not to e-file, you can send us a letter. You can write into our executive secretary. And if you want to attend the public comment hearing, it's happening at the Laurel Beltsville Senior Center. And it runs from about 6. It starts at 6 and it runs until about 8 o'clock. And each speaker who signs up gets about 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, and definitely let our admin, Kimberly Schock, know if you're going to be speaking. And, again, I will send this your way so that you have it handy. And
you got another case there. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say there is one more. Washington Gas has also asked to increase their rates. Participation in the Washington Gas rate case, those options are similar, except the in-person comment hearings have all passed at this point, but you can absolutely still submit your public comment on the Washington Gas rate case. The decision's expected also summer 2026. This one's probably going to be more like late July. The increase requested, 82 million, which is looking about like a 5.3% bill increase.
Well, I appreciate you laying those out, because I don't know if you can see in the chat on the Pepco front, especially, we have a comment from Brandon, which is kind of like the exact comment I think you're talking about, that you get a lot about. He's saying here that the bill is exceedingly high in the summer, but he thinks it might not even be any kind of misread or anything. He's just saying that is it just literally the rate is so expensive I can't afford to cool it now, and that sounds like this would be the way to try to get at that if you think that's the problem.
And that's valuable information. And that's exactly the kind of personal impact that resonates well in a comment. Sometimes when people make comments, there's a temptation to generalize and not really dive into the specifics, but the comments that seem most impactful talk about your specific experience, what you're seeing, why it's not what you were expecting, and how it's affecting your household, your family.
And same thing. So then I hope everyone saw the Washington Gas too. Those are both the two open that are still gonna allow comment then. That's good to know. And then the other thing here, I think I'm reading the question from Elizabeth about a nonprofit that got mentioned before that is the middleman for supply charges. I think it might not be a nonprofit. I think she might be talking about PJM, which is that company that does all the distribution regionally for us, right? Then that you were talking about that does the auction that you mentioned before.
Yes, PJM conducts the supply auctions for the energy that ultimately is sent onward to your place. Yes. Now sorry, I could stop sharing my screen to actually take a look at some of these comments. But yes.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. But yeah, thank you. That's no, that's good. Because I think PGA is in the news because if I'm not mistaken, that's the company that the governor and some legislators kind of descended upon their annual meeting and made some comments and things. So
the governors, some legislators, other governors across other states, bipartisan governors, a coalition of bipartisan governors, and President Trump. Surprisingly enough, they all got together and descended upon PJM to talk about the need for change. And there is a lot going on in PJM right now in terms of taking a look at how they conduct their auctions. Some of it is in terms of conferences, stakeholder feedback. Some of it is percolating through the federal court system.
I see. Okay. Thank you. And then there was a RUBS ratio utility billing question in there and the person that asked that did get brought up briefly, but in the sense that the Attorney General's office is going to probably receive those, you said, those kind of complaints. And so we'll definitely share that contact information. And then we found out, we'll mention it again too later on the county level too. Our Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs let us know they received those as well. So we'll definitely be sharing that info.
Absolutely. And to the question that Brandon M. had about the difference between the Pepco bill in the summertime versus the wintertime, there is an option called budget billing. I think that the title of that is extremely misleading because it implies a discount. There is not a discount that comes with budget billing, but what it does is look at the billed charges over your last 12 months of use and adds those up, divide them by 12, get your average monthly bill, and you are billed that instead for a 12-month period. So if you have a crippling summer bill and everything else is pretty modest, it can help spread those charges out over a longer time. The issue with budget billing that I don't think enough people know about when they sign up for it is what they call a true up. It's not just about a fixed monthly amount of money that you have to pay. If ultimately your usage is higher than what is accounted for in your bills, that is assessed to you at the end of the year. And if you don't monitor your usage closely, which is harder to do when you're not getting a monthly bill that details your usage, you may be on the hook for that at the end of the year. So as long as you're aware of that going into it, as long as you know to keep checking your usage, and they do include your true up balance on each of your utility bills. And I know especially with, a lot of online billing, auto pay billing, you don't always look throughout the entire bill. You're looking at the bottom line price, but budget billing is a great resource for spreading out the cost over 12 months instead of being catapulted with a giant bill for a handful of months. But just make sure that you don't accidentally have much higher usage than what you can ultimately want to pay for later.
Tiffany, if I may ask, likewise, if you created a monthly billing where you're paying more, will you accrue that at the end and get credited or reimbursed?
Yes, absolutely. It's not something that comes to us via complaint very often, but yes, in theory, that can definitely happen.
Maybe less down the age of the year-over-year increases that we're seeing, but
yeah.
Staff, I want to check in with y'all and see if there's first of all, if Renters Alliance staff has any questions about please chime in, or if there's anything in the chat y'all wanted to expand on or anything.
Yeah, there's a question that just came in about how does someone know if they're being overcharged for rubs? They were told that it was according to apartment size and occupancy, but they're alone in the bedroom and not home during the day. So I know I saw this, it was based on square footage in your slide, but is occupancy a valid way to charge for that too?
What is a valid way to charge is what your landlord spells out in your lease. If ultimately what they're charging is at odds with what is there in your lease, that is where you have a problem. And if you're not sure, I have my email address in these slides. I'm happy to take a look at whatever paperwork you've got and give you a feel for appropriateness there. But yeah, your lease is going to be the guiding document in what they're charging, whether it's appropriate.
So just to follow up on that, if lease says that it's based off of square footage, or I mean either square footage or occupancy, is the way to verify that to look at because you can't know what you should be charged without looking at everyone else's charge, right? So would you have to kind of audit every the whole building's usage and see if that is fairly charged, or how would you go about that?
Yeah, your landlord would be able to let you know how they divide it up from tenant to tenant, and that should be consistent from tenant to tenant. And they can provide you with the accounting of how they came to those numbers, how it was billed. If it's based on square footage, and if they kind of punt on that, then your third-party billing service could be your next go-to, if assuming you have one.
Yeah, I've seen them point tenants there first sometimes, but to the third part of it, either way, you need to check them at some point. If there is a third party biller, yeah, that would make sense. But also, I put the link in there just for the Office of the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, which is what I believe Stephanie mentioned has the RUBS jurisdiction at the state level for those complaints.
Stephanie, can I go back to enforcement process a little bit? So to Tim's question, if there is a belief that there's a discrepancy or an unfair application of billing, whether it be by square footage or common area usage subtracted by the population in the building under the ratio utility billing system, RUBS, is the complaint then possibly to the Public Service Commission, or is it expected to go through the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs? What's the court or consumer protection? What's the process?
Right, that one's going to go to the OAG Consumer Protection Division.
Right, and like I said to those watching too, we can definitely speak a little more to because our own county landlord tenant office will receive those too. There's kind of a little bit of an overlap there. I mean, whether what they'll do with it in the end, we can get into later. But yeah, that's part of why we have Mr. Kaufman with us too, because I think the RUBS complaints are one of the things that go to Ulta, whereas the rest of the utility kind of based things go to him. So, but yeah, any other questions for Stephanie based on her presentation or
I see one based on water submetering, and yeah, unless you're one of a handful of private water company customers, those are not ones that the commission oversees.
So you're saying someone's WSSC billed at the end of the day, that's not going to be, it'd have to be a private company, so that's not going to go to y'all.
Right. I'm going to include a list of the regulated water systems that we do oversee just for everybody's reference here in the chat.
I don't know if you covered this, Stephanie, but I just want to emphasize it if you did and ask the question if you didn't. When we have bills that come in with multiple utilities, so we're talking about gas and electric, then we're talking about water, and they're all done by the same third-party biller. Does each bill then get a $1 administrative fee? Because we've seen bills with a $6 administrative fee, and we're wondering how each dollar is legally applied, or does the lease override that if they say we're going to charge $6 for utility billing?
That's an interesting one. Let me get back to you on that. I'm going to run it by our staff counsel because I don't know that we've gotten that one before. Do you mind if I take that down and get back to you?
Sure, we see that quite frequently where bills coming in with a much larger than a $1 administrative fee for a third-party biller. Now, it would make sense if it was electric was $1 to calculate that, and if water was $1 to calculate that, and it's the same company, then you can add that up. But I don't know about 6 utilities in a building, so I'm wondering, how we are enforcing the rules on third-party billing.
We get
Administrative.
so
If I
few
may,
third.
pardon me for interrupting. This is Matthew Kaufman with the Office of Consumer Protection. I'll be able to answer that question in detail.
Ooh.
Oh, great.
So should I answer it now or wait?
If
Better
all
do
right.
it now, Matt, because I'll forget.
Sure. So our office, and again, so I'll talk about Montgomery County specifically when it's my turn, but in terms of the statewide laws, it's my understanding that when the laws were formulated, it wasn't really a thought process that anyone would ever spend the money to put individual sub-meters for each unit in an apartment complex. So there are no, we actually had a significant complaint by a large apartment dwelling, and they were actually being charged $15 a month just for water utility for the bill. And in our investigation, we discovered that there's no regulatory oversight for sub-metering for renters, only for master meters, or RUBS. The ratio utility billing system has that rule in place of $1 per bill, but for sub-metering, there's no rule, there's no limit in the law on what can be charged. As a result of our investigation, we discussed and engaged legislators and representatives at the state level and at the county level, and it was determined that the state level would be the best place to introduce regulations for this. And I know that there's a bill that's in the formulative stages in the state legislature to address exactly this issue, but it is not in regulation yet. So there are, to my understanding and from our investigation, there's no rules governing or limiting that.
And Matt, was that water sub-meters or any sub-meter? Sorry, I didn't catch.
That, from my understanding, that's all sub-meters. So electric, water for sure, and gas. From what I understand, that there's no, the rules for the limit on the cost per bill that can be charged to a tenant are related specifically to RUBS, to the ratio utility billing system, not to individual sub-meters that are privately owned.
So in effect, the loophole is allowing a private company to purchase utility, energy, or water and resell it.
No, it's a loophole that says you can't resell it, but you can charge whatever administrative fee to provide the bill that you deem appropriate.
Which is capped at $1 in context, you're saying, but not in this context.
Under RUBS billing law, both at the state level and the county level in Montgomery County, there's a $1 limit for each RUBS bill. Now, I couldn't comment on, it says that about each bill. I've not investigated or heard any court results, legal case results about having charging $1 for the electric bill, $1 for the water bill, and $1 for the gas bill under a ratio utility billing system. So I can't answer that question. But that limit applies specifically to ratio utility billing system, both at the state, on the state law, and on the local law.
Thank you, Matt.
Sorry, so Matt, quick question. So there's so essentially that's a cap. They can't raise that, can they?
Sorry, I mute myself and then unmute myself. I was going to just let it go back to the previous presenter, but yes, the law is very specific, and I believe that's a Public Service Commission regulation that under RUBS, it's $1 per bill is the surcharge that the landlord can convey to the tenant to cover the cost of generating a bill.
That is
The
correct, and that
submeter?
is capped at
Yeah.
statute. And the question of what happens if a company is charging for multiple utilities, do they just get $1 for all of them because they're one company charging for multiple utilities, versus can they charge, $1 for each type of utility transaction and makes it onto the bill? That's really interesting. I agree with you. I don't know that this has come in front of the commission before.
But it is also
Right.
deeply concerning separating that issue from a private sub-metering company that does not have any regulatory obligation in terms of billing charges.
Correct.
Right. Well, thank you. And yeah, so just before we leave this particular issue, but I think Matt Kaufman there had said that, this, as far as he knows, their investigation led to some legislative work on this at the state level. It's not in regulation yet. But yeah, Matt, I had mentioned at the top that I think that maybe the HB 220 from Delegate Charkoudian that did get through this session, as far as I know, maybe coming down the line, but that would only be individual water sub meters. So at least it would touch on the sub metering, but I think that was water specific. But if anyone wants to take a look at that, I think that's what that bill was trying to get at.
That
And I
is a
think
piece of legislation that the Renters Alliance was very much involved with. And we're very familiar with the building you're talking about, Matt Kaufman.
Well, great. So, and this may be a good time to transition, which is kind of already happened a little. Unless, Stephanie, do you have any other comments that you want to leave us with, or anything that you left hanging there that you want to, put a final word on or anything?
No, you guys go ahead. At the presentation, you'll see some additional information about community solar, about energy assistance. But yeah, let's hear from Matt if you guys are ready.
Well, thank you again so much for the third presentation, for your time. And yeah, please hang around if you want, or if you need to go, we understand. But we appreciate you sharing those materials and taking our questions. And yeah, so Matt, thanks again for jumping in there and joining us. Did you want to just backtrack a little bit, and maybe I think I called you an investigator before. Is that your title with OCP? Do you want to say a little bit about yourself or the office?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I apologize if there's my lack of prior preparation, because this meeting came up onto my attention just yesterday. So I'll do my best to answer as many questions as I can, and also keep the focus as tight on the specific issue as I can. But so I am an investigator. My name is Matthew Kaufman. I'm an investigator with the Montgomery County Office of Consumer Protection. I also happen to be a licensed home inspector. I was hired specifically for that reason, to deal with construction and building and the utility issues in terms of complaints we receive. Our office has several areas of responsibility, one of which is consumer protection law. We do investigate complaints and assist consumers in Montgomery County in dealing with controversies that they have with merchants, with purchases, not with private exchanges. So for instance, if you buy something from your neighbor, that's not technically a commercial transaction, but if it's a business that's providing a service or a good, something you've bought or paid for a service to be performed, and you're a Montgomery County resident, or the transaction happens in Montgomery County, we can investigate that and apply consumer protection law. We also register new home builders. We register small appliance repair businesses, secondhand property businesses. We regulate towing companies for private property tows, which also does relate to folks who live in apartment complexes and condominiums, because that's private parking technically. And then we also do a lot of outreach and education, because a lot of our complaints that we receive are about scams, deceptions, people lying and deceiving consumers and getting their money without actually providing any services or without being a legal business or entity. So that being said, I'm going to address a couple of things. We already talked a little bit about the ratio utility billing and the fact that those issues go to other agencies than ours. In Montgomery County, we do have an Office of Landlord-Tenant Affairs, and there are separate regulations addressing ratio utility billing in Montgomery County that basically almost exactly mirror the Public Utility Commission's regulations on ratio utility billing. So it's basically the same thing. And my understanding of that is that the landlord actually has an obligation to provide certain records from the overall bill, from the master bill, or from a history of billing when you sign the lease, so that you, as a tenant who's potentially going to rent that property, that you get to see what those utility bills look like before you actually sign the lease. Now, when it comes to complaints about submetering, it's very challenging because of the overall lack of regulation. The WSSC in Montgomery County does not regulate or permit or review or inspect the water meters themselves, the submeters. My understanding is the Public Utility Commission at the state level does not regulate or review or inspect submeters that are located in either commercial or residential properties. That's kind of, it's not something that we have a lot of oversight for, and it's a challenge to get evidence about it. So for instance, in one investigation I did, the plumber let it slip that some of the meters they were replacing in this apartment complex, that they were not working when they replaced them. And I tried to get that in writing so that I could actually make use of it. And the plumber, no, you must have misunderstood it. So it can be very difficult to get that information and get proof that we can then use to exercise our regulatory authority and hold the landlord accountable for inaccurate billing. So it's definitely a challenge, but we do take complaints on all manner of consumer issues that are not covered by other agencies. So we do refer to other agencies, including state agencies as well as county agencies, when it's a complaint that is not something that we have the authority to address. Now, in terms of the utility bill costs, there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention. I want to acknowledge that it's possible that some renters would actually have single-family dwellings where they do get a utility bill from the utility company. And I just want to mention that at least in Montgomery County, it's required that someone who comes to your door and knocks on your door has to be registered with the county, and they have to display an ID. And so this is a way that the residents can know that it's it's an actual business that has an address, that they're real people, real businesses, real names with real addresses and real business purposes. So I'd encourage consumers to be very careful about anyone who comes to your door and offers you to change your bill or asks you for information about your bill, for utilities or anything else if they can't produce a door-to-door sales registration in Montgomery County. And in general, it's a very tricky thing because not many people who come to your door knocking on it to offer you services there are certainly legitimate companies that do that, but the majority we find are not. And so I'd encourage people to exercise caution and get business information, and don't make a decision when someone's standing at your door pressuring you into making a change because it's going to save you loads of money, and not to give your information, but rather get the business information, research the business, and then make an informed decision about whether you want to engage that business for a service. The second thing I want to address is that as utility prices have gone up, and this is a very specific circumstance, but as utility costs have gone up, people are lowering their thermostat, for instance, to reduce the cost, but then they feel cold or hot and they increase the thermostat. Well, if it's an electric heating system, particularly in winter, this is not so much true of cooling systems, but for heating systems, when you change that thermostat more than a couple of degrees at a time, unless the system is a modern system that's programmed for efficiency, when you lower the thermostat and then raise it 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 degrees, in many systems there's called a heat pump system, that system will switch over from the heat pump to an electric coil system. This is for forced air, where you have warm or cool air blowing around out of vents in the living area. When you turn that thermostat up a large, 4, 5, 6, 7 degrees at one time, it actually costs way more to deliver the heat, because now you're not running on a highly efficient heat pump, you're running on electric coils that consume a lot more electricity. They heat up the house much faster, or the apartment much faster, but it costs a lot more to do so. The energy efficiency, it's a long conversation. There's lots of things that can go into that, but I would say that just to research that, because there's lots of good information available, both through state and county agencies, as well as publicly available information from nonprofits, and just general tips and tricks about things you can do to reduce your energy usage. I'll give a couple of examples. Obviously, making sure your windows are fully closed and latched does make a difference, because air coming from the outside to the inside makes a huge difference. Another thing people don't necessarily realize about air conditioning is that it takes 7 times the amount of energy to get rid of the humidity out of the air in the home as it does to lower the temperature. So if you open the windows and you let a lot of humid air in and then close the windows and turn the air conditioning on, it's going to take a while for the air to actually cool, because the system is going to use all its energy just removing the humidity from the air at first. Another thing is there's a lot of electricity used and wasted by just having things plugged in that are not operating. Microwaves, all these things that have timers and displays, and particularly ones that are networked, they use electricity when they're dormant and not actually performing their function. So some folks like to unplug those and eliminate that additional energy usage. So I think that's all I really have to say about this. In terms of filing a complaint with our office, I, again, didn't have the time to prepare something to deliver to you guys, so I'll just provide our phone number, our main line, to the Office of Consumer Protection, again, strictly for Montgomery County residents, and that's 240-777-3636. And we'd be happy to answer your questions and obviously help you process a complaint. We are also available on the Montgomery County, Maryland website. You can search for Office of Consumer Protection, and we do have information there. We issue podcasts every month about various issues on consumer protection, and avoiding scams. And we're also happy to come out and present to small community groups, you know, at community centers, however folks want to organize themselves. We'll be happy to come out and provide a presentation on any aspect of scam prevention and protecting oneself from unscrupulous behavior in the marketplace.
Well, thank you.
So with that, I think I'll just open it up to questions because I
Well,
don't
sure.
want to take too much time.
If I could at the top, I want to make sure that we stop apologizing for not having enough time to prepare, because part of, so folks know, it was wonderful that you were able to come with such short notice, because we had been it
My
was through
pleasure.
our conversations with landlord tenant Ulta at Montgomery County, who we were planning to have on, that we found out that they're really sure they received the ratio utility billing, but I think it was Zach Patton said a bulk of utility related things they end up having to refer to y'all. And so
Correct.
that, that's, but thank you for then on that short notice coming out. And our staff will be glad
My pleasure.
to put the website along with the phone that you gave. But yeah, thank you again. I think it looks like we have a few questions though, so I'll pause and Tim, were you about to ask one of those, or does anybody want to lift up some of the questions in the?
May I-
One
may
quickly
I-
about
yeah.
air conditioning billing. And I'm wondering, it's my understanding when we passed the air conditioning bill that required air conditioning in apartment communities, that I can't see any charge specifically for that, perhaps for the additional electricity, but I don't think that you can charge an air conditioning fee, can you?
So I haven't actually investigated that thoroughly. I do know that there are apartment complexes in Montgomery County that have, because just like you have a water meter, they're basically what's called flow-through meters, so that as the liquid passes through the pipe, it turns a dial and records the amount of times the dial goes around, and that turns into a quantification of how much liquid passes through that meter, and that's what you're billed on. There are apartment complexes that use that for HVAC, particularly ones that use water to deliver chilled or heated water to an air handler, and they meter that and then have a charge that they apply to the tenant based on how much water or even refrigerant flows through the pipe. The accuracy of that and how it's apportioned, that seems very difficult to regulate or even to understand exactly how it's happening. But yes, there are apartment complexes that are charging people for HVAC use. A much more straightforward one, pardon me for just speaking over you, but a much more straightforward one is just electricity usage for the operation of an electric heating system or air conditioning system.
That makes sense. Any appliance, whether it be air conditioning, refrigeration, or whatever, is going to use electricity, and that can go to the electric bill. But I've not heard that there's a specific usage of the air conditioning program, even if one doesn't use up Freon in any particular quantity, or except for over long periods of time, and the water flow would go to a water bill, I would think. So I'm not understanding it. We'd love to hear more as you investigate.
Well, I can explain that for you very quickly. So first of all, it's not just the water usage for the water bills, because usually you're charged for water and sewer. And so that's where things like leaks make a huge difference, because if there's a leak, if you have a dripping faucet, if there's outside faucets that are used for watering the lawn or the plantings around the building, all of that water should be metered separately, because you pay sewer fees on that water as well, unless it's metered so that the utility company, the water utility, knows and can verify that 1,000 gallons went to the interior pipes and 500 gallons went to watering the lawn. So we're going to charge you the water fee for 1,500 gallons, but we're only going to charge you the sewer fee for the 1,000 gallons that came out of faucets and went back into the sewer pipes. In terms of charging for HVAC, if you don't have the infrastructure to separate the metering of the electric air conditioning, let's say it's central, or you're using water that's running through a loop that's coming to each apartment dwelling, and that water is either heated or chilled, and then you can heat or cool the apartment using that water. They use the water passing, or the refrigerant passing through the pipe, to measure a ratio of how much refrigerant did apartment A use, how much refrigerant did apartment B use, just how much flowed through, because that indicates that the air conditioning system was running. How accurate that is, I have no idea. Is it scientifically feasible to come up with a ratio that would actually be accurate? Yes, it's scientifically feasible, but I don't know how you would do it.
Neither do I.
So that's helpful clarification. They're using it to create a metric there, and that
Correct.
shows the actual water. Josh, before I forget, did you have a question before we move on?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, David. Matt Kaufman, quick question for you. In terms of, so part of what we do as an organization is we help form tenants associations. And am I correct? You did say you would come out and speak with our tenant organizers and community. Is that correct?
We would love to.
Okay.
Because when it comes to scams and people being taken advantage of, every effort we can make to educate people about how to prevent scams and how to protect themselves and how to understand contracts better is so much more effective, because by the time someone comes to us with a complaint because they've been scammed, it's difficult to get the money back. If it's an actual scam by a criminal, they're practiced at deceiving people, they're practiced at hiding their identity, and we do make every effort to track them down and bring them to justice, but it's way harder to help someone who's already lost their money than it is to teach them how to not lose their money. So absolutely, we'd be happy to come out to tenant associations and do presentations on whatever aspect of, whether it's protection for the elderly or just phone scams or whatever it is, we'd be happy to come out and do outreach for the associations and groups to help them protect themselves.
Before we do other questions, I'm going to tack one last thing on the HVAC conversation there with the fee. It looks like we've got a couple people attending that have already said in the chat that they get these HVAC fees. They look pretty high. Yep. And so, as you mentioned, you're there. So if we're going to try to get, like Matt was saying, LoSAC, to get these in front of, you or the proper office to do the kind of investigation, where should those come, straight to y'all, or do you like for Ulta to have a look first if it's at one of these places, or what would you recommend for them?
So, I mean, we would be happy to receive a complaint about it. The problem is that to my knowledge, there's no regulations, there's no oversight, there's no way for us to apply a set of rules that, unless it's deceptive. In other words, if you signed a lease that did not include HVAC costs as part of the bills that you were going to have to pay, then Landlord Tenant Affairs, the Office of Attorney General, or us, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, would be able to address that, because it's a non-disclosed fee. But in terms of actually investigating that, I just admit I don't even know how to assess that type of metering. So if there's no regulation or no law that's been violated and there isn't a deceptive practice, then it's very difficult. So we can investigate it, but the conclusion we're going to come to is we need regulations to be able to apply. We need something that creates oversight or stipulations or expectations on how this is done, how it's turned into a metric, how it's charged to tenants, how it's disclosed to tenants. And with HVAC, there are so many more variables about how that relates to the cost of the system in other words, the actual energy the system used, is the system being maintained properly by the management? That makes a huge difference to how efficient it's going to run.
Mhm.
So we don't have anything to apply in terms of regulations to say this is wrong or that's right.
Well, like
We
with
can
that
still
building that
investigate
you
it,
all,
but we don't
sorry,
have a
Matt.
lot to apply.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Matt, sorry to interrupt. Like that building you investigated with the private metering service, it would probably be good to work with you and anybody else who's got some experience with this to find out what's actually happening and then to make recommendations on code or state legislative efforts. Because when we put in the air conditioning law, it was designed to address a health and safety issue, but I don't think it was
Right.
contemplated that there would be a fee for that usage beyond, of course, the utility of electricity or water.
Correct. Yes, I agree with that. And part of the issue is that we would need expertise that I certainly don't have and our office doesn't have, because we would need like a master HVAC technician, and I'm not even sure they would know how that metering works, or so that's part of the problem is how does that work and how accurate is it and how is it translated. So on that note, I just want to say, because I forgot to mention this before about electricity, and I'm not an authority on this, but there's two types of electrical metering. One is a meter that actually measures the current flowing through the wire. The other is a wattage meter that's a clamp that goes around the wire and measures the electrical field. And so I don't know if that's allowed. Like, I'm not aware of there being any regulations on this. I do know from my experience as an inspector that wattage meters can be unreliable and inconsistent as compared to the meters that the utility company uses, where the current is measured as it flows through the wire, which has that's accurate. But the wattage meters, they're much less reliable and much less consistent from meter to meter.
Well, I appreciate that. And so let's I want to recap, make sure everyone heard what Matt Kaufman said at the beginning there, which is don't forget the lease language part of that. So all this,
Correct.
potentially unreasonable kind of crazy metrics that are being made up or what have you, how they attempt to communicate that in lease is very important. And that is what Renters Alliance is glad to be here for too. So to the renters, on this call and then they watch this later that are hearing this issue, please reach out to us, because as Stephanie brought up earlier, and our Pat on our team always brings up, there's a lot of hidden stuff in these leases, and we are more than happy to try to go through that with you, with anyone. And then also, that's how the regulations we need will eventually get made, is if we can get any unreasonable things in front of the policymakers. We need to see those examples. So please don't forget to reach out to us. But I see it's 8:15. We want to make sure to get, if you're still okay, Matt Kaufman, I think there's a couple more questions, staff, for him, or how are we looking?
I'm happy to answer them if we have time.
Let's see. I'm just I'm not looking at the Q&A. I didn't know if any other staff had a chance to look at that.
And they can also be sent to me afterwards, and I'd be happy to answer them afterwards, so they can be posted.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. We'll put your email in the chat, and people can,
No,
if we
please
haven't
do
gotten
not.
to it, they can email their questions.
Please don't put my email in the chat for everyone. Please send me I already can't keep up with the emails I have with my caseload. So I'd request that those questions be sent through your organization directly to me, that I can provide to you to answer, and then you can disseminate. That would
Very
be
good.
If I can ask that, it would be much preferable, because I want people's questions to be answered. And if I get inundated by emails, I won't be able to keep up.
No, understood. We have the OCP general info up there that we'll put in one more time too, of
That's
course.
appropriate, yeah.
But for these cases that are going to require a little more unpacking, please use Renters Alliance as a resource there. We'll connect. But great. Okay. Well, if in that case, Matt, same thing. But first of all, thank you again for joining us with the short notice and for the information. You're welcome to hang out for our last few minutes here, or if you got to go, I understand. But thanks again for the information. Of course, we'll be in touch, and we'll
Thank
be
you.
connecting. And so next, if I could, before I hand it off to staff. Oh wait, someone. Okay, yeah. Before I hand it off to other staff here, I want to just make a note about ratio utility billing because it's come up several times, and I'll, as we start talking about our agencies in the county, like landlord, tenant, and others, we'll just start with the Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, which is as a reminder that we're talking about Montgomery County Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs. If you live in the city of Gaithersburg, the city of Rockville, the city of Tacoma Park, city limits, not greater, but yeah, then you have your own Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs there. And so anything that I'm saying that would go to ULTA, for short, landlord tenant, would go to that city landlord tenant. The county will refer you if you call them, but just know that. And so that's going to be landlord tenants disputes about things like we're talking about here. Lease language is something in the lease that's not allowed to be there. Are they not holding up? Is the landlord not keeping the terms of the lease that they put out there? Are you getting notices of increases or changes that are improper or at the wrong time? Those are the kind of things that are going to go to landlord tenant. And as we've heard tonight, just to recap, ratio utility billing, or RUBS for short, is one of those complaints that landlord tenant would receive, and can also go at the state level to the Office of Attorney General. But I want to, just reiterate what some folks have been, some of our attendees tonight have been very helpful with information about this and reminders that at the beginning, like Matt Kaufman said, the landlord has to give you certain information about the master bills at the beginning, so you know what you're getting into, essentially. And under a law that Delegate Vaughn Stewart, I believe, authored, who our board member, it's laid out very clearly that they need to show you a couple months of that. And then later, there's provisions too for if you're already in a lease and you think something's wrong, a request to investigate the master bills. And it is not a perfect system. The enforcement is not at the level that it should be. I can tell you, because having gone through this with a few folks that we've worked with, it's hard to get the landlord to comply with, as the folks brought up. Is this common usage water? Is that the water, for the watering the grass and the water fountain and things? I've filed complaints, and I've managed to have landlord tenant offices work with landlords to get that information for tenants review, but then pushing it all the way to where you're seeing all the common area and all that information. It's difficult, and those complaints don't go very far sometimes. And on the state level, there's just a backlog. That's just the truth there. So want to make sure that we recommend for RUBS things that have come up, that reach out with us, make sure you're reviewing the lease. If you think the property manager owes you some information about master bills, request it directly. If you get silence or the wrong answer, that please, that would be a complaint, and feel free to have us help you out with that, so we can make sure that you get a response. So that's ratio utility billing, and that's the Landlord Tenant Affairs Office. And now I will hand it off. I guess, Jackie, am I handing off to you, or who's next for our other county agencies?
Okay, I'll be next. So I want to speak briefly about rent stabilization. So what is rent stabilization exactly? So effective July 23rd, 2024, rent stabilization protects tenants by limiting annual rent increases in certain fees. This promotes housing stability in Montgomery County while ensuring landlords maintain a fair return on their investment. So each year, the DHCA sets and publishes the annual rent increase allowance for regulated units. It is in effect from July 1st to June 30th of the following year. This increase is based on the CPIU plus 3% or a flat 6%, whichever is lower. So currently it's at 5.7% until June 30th. When we will get the new rate July 1st, which will be announced, and we'll talk about it here. If the landlord increases rent by an amount less than the allowable increase, they may save or bank the unused dollar amount for future increases. When applying an increase that includes banked rent, the total increase cannot exceed 10% of the unit's current rent. A landlord may not increase the rent of a unit more than once per 12-month period. And finally, for multi-year leases, the rent amount must stay the same for the duration of the lease. Meaning if you have a 2-year lease, they cannot change your mid-lease. You have to maintain it at the same rate. There are some exemptions. Unless otherwise exempt, all county licensed residential rental units that are at least 23 years old as of January 1st are rent stabilized. A unit is exempt if it meets certain conditions. Also, if you live in the city of Gaithersburg and the city of Rockville, they do not have rent stabilization in those cities because they're municipalities.
Yet.
We're working on it. Now, there's certain fees that are regulated under the Office of Rent Stabilization, and they're the following. The application fee, no more than $25, or the landlord's actual cost for the application. Pet fees are regulated underneath the Office of Rent Stabilization, lost key fee, lockout fees, secure storage, internet cable TV, motor vehicle parking, and bicycle fees. Additionally, if you feel like you're also getting an excessive rent increase and you're having trouble negotiating that with your landlord, you can contact the Office of Rent Stabilization. They can help you negotiate with your landlord your high rent increases. We believe that any rent increase that's in the double digits is about high. If you'd like to contact the Rent Stabilization, you can call them at 311. I'm also going to provide a link to their website. I'm now going to toss it over to Tim to talk about housing code. Tim, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Jackie. So if you have issues with your units, structurally, like mold, heat issues, past other safety hazards, you can reach out to code enforcement to do an inspection. We always recommend first, though, that you, like any complaint, that you talk to your manager and let them know about your issue. If they don't fix it in a reasonable amount of time, then you can call code enforcement. And what is reasonable will depend on what the issue is. If it is an emergency, then something like 24 hours would be reasonable. And if it's something that is like a broken light bulb, that can wait a little bit longer. If you live in the cities of Gaithersburg and Rockville, then you have your own code enforcement department. So you reach out to them if you're in those cities. Tacoma Park actually contracts with the county, so they share the county's code enforcement. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about making a complaint. I believe someone will put the code or the link to code enforcement. There it is, Emily. Thanks. In the chat, or you can call 311 to make a complaint.
Thanks, Tim. On topic for tonight with utility problems, the high cost of utilities, just wanted to briefly mention that there is utility assistance available. You can reach out to us at info@rentersalliance.org to get into specifics, like sending your zip code or how much arrearage or how much back utilities you owe, so that I can send you the appropriate resource. You can also just Google My MD Think. That is a state portal. If you've ever applied for SNAP or temporary cash assistance, it's that same portal, which can also be utilized to apply for utility assistance. Again, we have more information on that, but in the interest of time, if you are behind on your utilities, please reach out to us. We can send you in the right direction. One other quick resource before we end is the Access to Counsel and Evictions program. To switch gears, this is for folks who are facing eviction, low-income tenants. If you have a case for failure to pay rent, breach of lease, or tenant holding over, meaning you've stayed past your lease date and the landlord has asked you to leave by giving you a notice to vacate, and you have a court date coming up, you can reach out to one of the legal aid providers, or you can call directly, or you can call 211 to do an intake and get connected with one of the local providers. The local providers being Maryland Legal Aid, CASA, and Community Legal Services. But we can put all those numbers in the chat, or you can just call 211 and they'll connect you to whoever has availability to take on your case. Even if they aren't able to represent you, they can still give legal advice, and they also offer same-day representation down at the courts. So, and also reach out to us if you're not sure if you qualify, or you're not sure if you need a lawyer, you can just reach out to us for more clarification. We'll connect you with legal aid.
Pat, what should everybody do? You're on mute. So first they should get off mute.
Hi, my fellow renters, the primaries are coming up for June 11th through the 18th. That's early voting. Election day will be the 23rd of June. So please get down and do your due diligence to get your voice heard, is what it is. So, you know, please keep those dates in mind and make it a priority to get to the ballot boxes. Also, Renters Alliance still have plenty of renters. I'm a renter and I vote button. And if you are interested in receiving one, just send us your address and name. We'll see to it that you get one. But voting is important. It's the only real tool we have. So make it a priority.
And I want to just address, thank you, Pat, one of our favorite questions that just popped into the chat, which is just about forming tenants associations, which is something we always are ready to talk about, probably more than people want, frankly. So everything that we've just kind of gone over is just directly connected and to whether you're organized with the community that you live in. A lot of these complaints, you know, can be amplified and better understood by the county offices if they understand that they're widespread problems. But then even just problems aside, it's just knowing your neighbors for safety reasons, for community reasons. It's really a positive thing, and we love to help out with that. So if you want assistance doing an initial meeting, or if you've had a couple meetings and you're looking for ideas for you know, how to address some of the issues that are coming up, if you need help spreading the word and you know, flyering and door knocking for your event, please reach out. Our staff is here to support you, and we definitely want to do that whenever possible. I think that's it. Matt, do you want to any final thoughts?
Oh, I just want to say thank you, David, for shepherding us through tonight's town hall. Thanks to all of our panelists, especially Stephanie Bolton and Matt Kaufman, and of course our staff. We're here to help. Contact us at info@rentersalliance.org. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thanks, Matt. Good night, everybody.
Good night.